Good morning. My name is Matt Genius. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I am here on behalf of the I Got You Summer Experience. And I'll be presenting to you all today on the topic, the garden, creating a culture of love within the home. As a licensed marriage and family therapist, I specialize in Black male wellness and relational intimacy. And so we will be covering some of those today, and I'll see how I can make this as interactive as possible, even though I'm not there. I wish I could have been there with you all today, but unfortunately, I have other obligations to tend to. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get right into this. The garden. Creating a culture of love within the home. I don't know about you all, but I love me some fruits. I love me some fruits of mangoes, some watermelon, papaya, star fruit, coconut, orange, grapes, banana, and as a bonus, what I would ask is if anybody can name every fruit on this chart, give yourself a pat on the back because I can't. There are several fruits that I see on here that I don't know what they are, but I'm sure somebody in there is looking at this chart, looking at this and saying, yeah, I know that. I can name all of them. If you can, great. If you can't, no worries. But I would love for you guys to do this first exercise with me. If you had to name yourself a fruit, what would you be? And if you name yourself a specific kind of fruit, why would you name yourself that kind of fruit? And then think about the partner that you have. If you had to name your partner a fruit, what would they be? And then in a similar manner, if you have any children, if you have any grandchildren, what fruit would they be and why? And write those down, and we'll come back to that at the very end of our training together. All right, so let's go over some of our objectives. Our objective together will be together we will explore the ingredients of a successful family, the culture of love. We'll understand the 7 dimensions of intimacy and how they apply to parenting/ecosystem. We'll identify practical techniques to cultivate each dimension in ourselves and our seeds. And we will learn how to protect the environment from harm and dysregulation patterns. And then we will create habits to grow and maintain the culture of love/self-care, right? And the tools we will use is the intimacy assessment, which will be a handout, and the relationship paradigms, which will also be a handout as well. Let's keep going. So in the biblical narrative, in Genesis 1:28, the Bible states that, and God blessed them and said to them, referring to Adam and Eve, be fruitful. This was their assignment. Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it. Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on earth. What an assignment. What a first assignment to have. And with every assignment, I'm sure it comes fatigue and burnout, right? I don't know about you all, but I know for me, when I first started working, it only took 90 days. After 90 days, sometimes you get comfortable. You get comfortable to the point of not showing up, fulfilling your full obligations to the role that you have. And that's common. And so what we will learn how to do is take this assignment that was given to our first parents, the first assignment that was given, and see how we can still live in the vein of being blessed, of being fruitful and multiplying, of filling the earth and subduing it, and having dominion. Let's get back to it. And so let's start by asking this one question. What are we bringing? What are the successful ingredients to a garden, right? What are the successful ingredients? What are the ingredients that create success in your garden? And of course, I'll be using garden, ecosystem, and family interchangeably. And I know this is the South, so a lot of us may have agreement. In fact, we're on a farm right now. And so a lot of you may have some ideas, if not be experts in this area of what it takes to have a successful garden. Of course, it takes some sunlight, some really healthy soil, water, right? Some of nature has to play a role, the bees, and of course it takes the care of a knowledgeable individual but all things must be balanced. All things must be balanced. And of course, there are other important ingredients that you can fill in that are specific to your garden, to your ecosystem. But each one of these things, the sun, the soil, the water, the bees, the care, reflect differently in our ecosystem, in our family. And so the question is, what are we bringing to the ecosystem of our family? What are we bringing, right? What are we bringing every day? You know, when we leave the house and we come back, when we turn on the news with the programs we watch and the people we share, you know, our ecosystem with, what are we bringing individually to then create an ecosystem either for the creation and the maintenance or for the diminishment and the death, you know, of our garden. And so there's a paradigm that I created because as a family therapist, I see a lot of couples that end up in their relationship 15, 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, and they may not have had all of the ingredients to create a healthy ecosystem. And so here are some of the things that I educate them about that help them create an ecosystem that they can thrive in, right? The garden is a space where we should be thriving. The garden is a system, is an ecosystem where, you know, intimacy should be filled there, right? For those who do work in the soil, sometimes you do have to get really intimate, close, and get your hands in there, right? To really grow that particular fruit or vegetable that you're growing. Others may not need as much care, but when it comes to intimate relationships, all of them need multiple points of intimacy. You know, when it comes to relationships, all of us need multiple points of intimacy to maintain and grow our relationship. So, what are those intimate points? Mentally, right? Mental intimacy is us sharing a space internally in the mind. What do I know? What do I think? What are my thoughts for myself, for my future, for my family? And how do I share them with the people that I say I care about? And each relationship represents a different level of how we share what we call intimacy, right? So with an acquaintance, we would share intimate knowledge mentally, but not as much. With our friends, we probably share a little bit more. With our close friends, we are increasing the level of how we share mentally. With our best friends, sometimes we can be open books. With the people that we're dating, it depends on what phase in the dating cycle you're in, but it's known to be a space of intimate sharing mentally, right? Engage, it grows further. When you're married, honestly, there should be no room in the mind where your partner could not explore. Right? If you're thinking about the mansion of the and it's an open space for you, right? Then it should be an equally open space for your partner as well, right? Even when we're divorced, we still share intimacy across these areas right here: mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, relationally, physically, financially, parental, future, and vocational, because we may have kids together. And that means we still share parts of ourselves with each other. It may be at a varied level from married to divorce, but it's still an intimate relationship. And when they learn this, you can see the shift in their selves individually, because the challenge is, how do we share these things with ourselves? How are we aware of our own mental spaces, our own emotional spaces, our own spiritual spaces, and socially, you know, when we're outside? How are we aware of what our wants, needs, and desires are in these areas? Right? What do I know about myself to then feel comfortable enough to share with the person I call my friend? And it varies for different people, because some of us are socialized differently. When you think about genders, I think very often it is seen that young women are socialized to be more open in intimate relationships when it comes to their friendships with each other. But men, however, it's a different level of intimacy that we miss out on because we're not socialized in the way where we can share multiple parts of us with, you know, with our partners, with our friends. and so forth. And so by the time we get here, there's a huge difference between how we come together to create an ecosystem to then bring kids into that, right? And so there's a miseducation that happens when it comes to the talk, right? The education that should occur in our young minds before they even start to make friends, before they even start to get into the space of dating, before we get engaged, before we get married. But even though we're here, we might be there already. There's still room to learn about what it means to be intimate in these areas. Emotionally, how do I share my heart? What do I feel safe enough to share with my partner? What do I feel safe enough to share with my partner spiritually? Right? And social settings, how do we still care for each other and let each other know that they're still number one in our minds and in our hearts? How do we check in? How do we make sure our partners are safe, right? Relationally, how are we calling out the relationship and growing it, right? Meaning, you know where you are. I know we're married. That's my awareness, and I am making sure that I can maintain and elevate this relationship. Physically, it's not just about the sex. It's not just about sex. It's about all levels of physical touch. It might be just being shoulder to shoulder, which men often do. When men go to war, they're shoulder to shoulder. When men play sports, shoulder to shoulder, right? And so, what I've learned about creating intimate spaces for men is that in my sessions, when I used to have an office back in South Florida, I would take men for walks instead of sitting on the couch, across from me and having a conversation like that. It's adversarial at times. And so what I would do is I'd put them shoulder to shoulder. We'd go for a walk and we could have a bunch of conversations. We'd go to a basketball court and it was easy to break the ice that way. We would go to other settings. What I'm teaching is how to learn what the individual need to then grow in these areas. What is the atmosphere, the setting, the conditions to then share myself and also receive intimacy from the people that I value? Because intimacy, right? Intimacy, the space where intimacy dwells is a space where relationships can thrive, right? A space where intimacy thrives, relationships thrive as well, right? When we have all these bridges, then we're not missing out on a lot of the things that each other have to offer. But when we only are relating on just a few points and those points are lost or those points start to diminish, and we feel like we're disconnected and the atmosphere shifts. And then before you know it, the ecosystem changes and then everyone pays for that difference. As a family therapist, one of the ways we're taught is to look at systems. We look at the individual when they come in our office, but we also look at the family. We also look at the school. We also look at the job. We also look at the spaces of faith. We also look at their communities. We look at so many different systems that plays a role in that person coming forward. It's the same thing within our families. If we come in not being able to share and understand all these different aspects of how we come together to create a healthy ecosystem, then what happens is that the ecosystem that we create will not be conducive for the growth, right? For the healthy growth of the individuals that are in there. Meaning you can have children, but what are the growth when it comes to social and emotional development? What are the growth when it comes to spiritual development? What are the growth when it comes to physical development when the ecosystem isn't right? Right? For those who are green thumbs, you can grow anything, but that doesn't mean that it will be the best version of that thing if you don't have the appropriate ingredients to then make sure that fruit, that vegetable, that plant, the beans, the corn, whatever it is you're growing, if it's out of its element or if all the ingredients aren't there, then you may have crop, but they won't be as big, they won't be as plentiful. And it's the same in our families. It starts with how we show up. And so the challenge and the assessment that you guys have in your hand is to understand what has been brought, what has been evident of intimacy in your relationship for the past 4 to 6 months, for the past 4 to 6 weeks, for as long as you can think about. When it comes to your friendships, but the assessment is specifically about romantic, but when it comes to your friendships, best friend, dating, engaged, wherever you are, Can you assess to figure out what's been exchanging? And in the assessment, it has four different pillars, four different columns to then ask the question of what's being given and what's being received. The first column asks, what have you been receiving from your partner? When it comes to mental intimacy, emotional intimacy, what have you been receiving from that partner? Right? And the scale is from 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. And the reason why this is important is because when we know, then we can start to create the difference. We can start to create the shift and what is necessary to grow that area of intimacy. You know, for the good farmers, for the good green thumb individual, for the person that knows what they're trying to develop in the ecosystem in their garden, they have to do tests, pH, right? You know, how much water the plant is getting, what sunlight this specific plant needs, what other plants benefit this plant by having around it. You have to know what is needed to cultivate a healthy environment. And similarly, we have to start with ourselves. What do I need mentally to feel comfortable and confident in my friendships, in my close relationships, and the person that I'm dating, and the person that I'm engaged with, and the person that I'm married to? But it has to start with me. What do I need? And then the question isn't what can they bring, first of all, it's what I can fulfill within myself first before I engage in this. I have to understand what my capacity is, what my wants, needs, and desires are in each one of these relationships, right? And so if we are married, then what are my needs emotionally? What are my wants emotionally? And when you score that person, is not to put that person and to indict that person, it's to say that maybe the awareness isn't or wasn't fully there. And the desire is for more. And once we know, then we can shift, we can create that shift. So I'll get back to this paradigm in a second. However, this earlier paradigm, this old paradigm, is the way a lot of us end up in unhealthy ecosystems because society doesn't allow us to really differentiate between any of our relationships anymore, right? And unfortunately, a lot of our youth have been cultivating this unhealthy understanding of what relationships are, and they show up in their relationships romantically this way because sometimes they find these examples to be very prevalent in the ecosystem of the home, right? And so if that is the case, then they're learning unhealthy habits, right? With our acquaintances, what are we doing? We're doing everything that we do with our friends. We're doing everything that we're doing with our best friends, dating, married, engaged. So there's no real difference when it comes to the actions we take when it comes to us getting together. We greet each other, that's fine. We text each other, that's cool as well. On the phone, maybe. Hanging out, of course. Hugs, sure. You know, holding hands, okay. Kissing, sexting, touching, even sex, right? Having a one night stand, friends with benefits. My bestie, but that's also a person that, and I can call up, right? There's no distinguishable difference. And when there's no distinguishable difference, what happens is that we're lost and we're confused and we don't know the ingredients to then grow. We're stagnant, we're frustrated, we're anxious. And then that becomes an unhealthy ecosystem that doesn't produce good fruit, right? And then by the time we get here, we're frustrated. And before you know it, we're over here. And then the relationship is no more. If we even make it here, there's a lot of youth in this generation that aren't interested in marriage anymore, that aren't interested in getting engaged anymore because what their wants, needs, and desires are being fulfilled with just two levels, two areas of intimacy, which are primarily social and physical. And the social fades away and the physical fades away as well. When they're not at the highest level, what happens? Then the relationship will fade away. But if you have multiple areas of intimate connection in your relationship, within yourself first, if you know what you need, what you want, and you desire, and you're able to maintain that in yourself first, then it will be easy to exchange that in any relationship when it comes to growing and cultivating, an ecosystem of love, right? So by the time we get here to our marriage and our family, we've already designed the ecosystem to be healthy because we're connecting mentally. We're connecting with each other emotionally. right? We're not hiding these things from each other. We know what it feels like to connect with someone spiritually, socially, relationally. And then the physical only benefits from these multiple areas of connection, right? Physical intimacy grows when we're connected mentally, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, financially, as healthy parents, knowing about our future and our vocational desires. When we have all of those things in sync, oh my gosh, the physical intimacy is that much sweeter, right? That means when you have the ingredients for a healthy ecosystem, you will be fruitful and multiply in a lot of ways. Now, in a lot of ways, it's not just the physical, but you will benefit from your own mental wellness. Your own mental wellness will be high because of the efforts you're putting into yourself first. It's easy to ask these things of our partner. And as you can see in the column, the first column is what you receive from your partner on the assessment, the intimacy assessment. The second column is what you bring to your partner. All right, what do you bring into the equation? It's easy to say that you're not receiving, but what have you brought to the equation of intimacy in your relationship? The third column asks for what are our expectations? Sometimes we don't even know that we should be expecting these things because, excuse me, they are a healthy part of developing and maintaining our ecosystem, our culture of love within our homes, right? And then the last column asks about what do you bring to yourself? We're not going to leave you off the hook. I've been mentioning that for a while. I must know what my wants, needs, and desires, and I must know how to maintain them. It is not to say that our partners aren't there to support and to assist us, but what you will learn is that it is your responsibility to know where you are and what you need to maintain that first. And then we can share that information with those we say we love and we care about so that they can co-facilitate the development of a space where intimacy thrives, right? And so how do we learn about what we need or where we are? How do we learn, right? So this is another great uh, graphic of what I've learned from um, a world-renowned psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Bruce Perry. The first couple of slides are what I created. This is what he created, and I've been using this ever since because it's been such a game changer for me. So Dr. Bruce Perry is world-renowned. He wrote a book with none other than Oprah Winfrey that is entitled "What Happened to You." And what he's really, at least for me, what he's really famous for is creating these two paradigms about regulation and dysregulation. The regulated mind and the dysregulated mind. The mind that is in the higher self, the mind that is in the lower self. The mind that is of the spirit, the mind that is without the spirit. Right? The mind that moves with intention, the mind that moves based on based on the subconscious, based on being unaware, based on being uninformed, right? And so these two parallels are both inside of us and both for our good. But it's knowing where you are and knowing what the usage is to then get the best out of it, right? And so I know that's a lot. So the regulated mind, everyone say regulated. Excellent. Everyone say dysregulated. Excellent. So the regulated mind has different mental states, and the dysregulated mind has several mental states as well. And I want you to focus on yourself first, because this is how we cultivate the ecosystem internally first before we offer it up to any relationship, right? If I know where I am, then it's up to me to make the best decision on how I approach and engage in any relationship that I'm in. And so the mental states of a regulated person are calm and alert. And the calm mental state affords us to be in a space where we can have a high level of IQ. We have an extended future sense of time, meaning we're very present, but we're aware of what the consequences and benefits of our actions in this present state because our minds are clear. And our adaptive response is rest, right? So this is an advantageous space because this is where we thrive. This is where intimacy can grow. This is where we are intentional in the things we say and do. This is where we are careful, right? In our thoughts and our words and our actions and our emotions because we understand not just the understanding, just to say we understand, but we have a higher level of awareness in our minds based on being in a calm state. And the alert state, this is a state that I think most of us have adopted, where we're multitasking, our IQ goes down a little bit, we're still able to function and think and consider the hours and the days ahead. We're vigilant, we make it work, right? And in this space, we still can create a space where intimacy thrives, right? Where we can create a healthy ecosystem that can produce good food. These lines of demarcation right here speak about the triggers that takes us from a regulated mind to a dysregulated mind, from your normal self to your lower self, from your higher self to your lower self. And this self right here is about survival mode, right? And the survival self is a self that's alarmed, that's in fear, that's in terror. And what it affords you is a diminishing mental capacity. Like you go from a brilliant individual to a person that's lacking the intellect to communicate effectively, that lacks the intellect to then communicate with the appropriate tone, to use appropriate words, to use appropriate action. In the alarm state, you're then only considering the consequences and benefits for only minutes and seconds, for hours and minutes, excuse me. In the fear state, minutes and seconds. In the terror state, no consciousness at all of any consequence to your words, tones, and action, or to anything you do in those moments. All gloves are off in the terror state. In fact, the regulated state is governed by our parasympathetic nervous system, the system that regulates our body, keeps us calm, feeds us all of the things we need to then function normally. The dysregulated state is governed by our autonomic nervous system, the system that is about our survival. Most people have heard of fight, flight, and freeze. Fight, flight, and freeze. There's a third F that is seldom left out. And of course, there are other charts that, I'm just giving it to you how Bruce Perry gave to me. And one of the things that he said was the fourth F, I'm sorry, was flock. And this is where the ecosystem really, really thrives when we have someone to flock to, right? When we have a person to flock to and they are in a regulated state, it's easy for us as dysregulated individuals to go to someone that's regulated. So when you think about the parent-child, the sheep to shepherd analogy, and think about wherever the shepherd goes, so will the sheep. Wherever the head goes, so will the body. And so if the mind is dysregulated, the body will follow. And if the head is dysregulated, the parents, the adults are dysregulated, so will the kids. And the benefits of knowing where we are benefits our kids in the long run, because if we understand where we are, whether it's regulated or dysregulated, we then make a choice, a conscious choice that will keep intimacy present. If we're regulated, please proceed, engage with your children, right? Have a good time. You can even discipline them in a conscious mind and a regulated mind and the mind that's aware. But when you're dysregulated and you're engaging, more likely than not, you will continuously dysregulate that child, might even traumatize that child. Some of us may be the product of a dysregulated environment, of a dysregulated ecosystem. And what we do then is normalize dysregulation as the standard for our ecosystem, where intimacy does not live, right? Where love does not reside, right? And then the detriment to us being over here is costly for the seeds that we have. I know some of us may have heard of the Adverse Childhood Experience Study, ACEs, that talks about traumatic experiences in childhood and how they impact us in our adulthood. The more traumatic experiences we have in our childhood, the more dysregulation, where the adrenaline and cortisol pumps in our system in our childhood from 0 to 18, the more the impacts of negative health outcomes will result in our 40s, 50s, and 60s. What is that saying? It's saying that it is our responsibility as parents to regulate ourselves first, to create an ecosystem that is well for ourselves first, to then engage with the child that may be dysregulated, right? To create that level of intimacy there, right? How are we communicating here? Not intimately. We're yelling, we're screaming, all gloves are off. We're using choice words that are not what we should be using to communicate with each other. And if this is the ecosystem that we're growing our children in, we are doing damage to them, right? And so the benefits, right? The benefits of being in the intimate mind are so, so vast, right? So vast. This mind allows us to be intentional in what we create because we are aware. And so if you're intentional and your awareness is high, then you know what ingredients you need to bring into your system to keep it that way and to elevate it. And when you don't know is when you have to go get the help that you need to get a better understanding of what you're creating in either one of these systems, right? And so in the regulated mind, the advantages are I am well. And when I am well, I give from my well, and my well will always be replenished because I am connected in this space to my higher self, right? To my divine self. And my cup will run over every time. But as soon as I get to this dysregulated state, my goodness, the difference in me, right? And what are some of the things that get us to this dysregulated state? Hunger, loneliness, being tired, being angry brings stress, right? There's a Snicker commercial that says you're not yourself when you're hungry. Grab a Snicker, but it may not just be hunger. It may be fatigue. It may be loneliness. It may be grief that we haven't addressed that gets us in this dysregulated state based on a trigger, based on us watching the news, based on us phoning a friend or seeing a phone call come in, right? And not knowing how to make the right choices to get into a regulated state or not knowing what we need to get back into that regulated state. So it is the individual's responsibility to know, first of all, what takes us to this dysregulated state and what we need to get us back to this regulated state, right? To this dysregulated state, what takes us over and what gets us back. Sometimes it's water, sometimes it's a bath, sometimes it's a meal, sometimes it's being out in nature, sometimes it's putting on some music, dancing, movement, yoga, breathing. There are so many different things, but you have to understand what you need individually first, and then be able to share that with the people you care about in each one of those relationships that will outline to then be able to cultivate ecosystems, systems where we can grow and share our love with each other, right? So almost done, almost time for Q&A. I want to bring in another verse in scripture. John 15:4 says, Jesus said, every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that continues to bear fruit, he repeatedly prunes so that it will bear more fruit, even richer and finer fruit. And listen, what that means to me is that when we understand what those triggers are, what those things are, that may not be allowing us to have an ecosystem that will produce good fruit, we need to start pruning. We need to start cutting some of these things off. We need to start looking at our phones and deciding, I'm not going to answer. We need to start deciding that, you know what, I can't keep going to this space if it dysregulates me. And then I bring that same dysregulation back into my ecosystem and then stain the ecosystem that creates illness in me and the people that I care about, right? And so we have to learn how to cut these things off, right? And this is what I love about pruning. My dad was a gardener. I hope I mentioned, if I didn't mention, I learned just recently that my grandfather was a farmer and a butcher, and he was a person that really understood the outdoors very well. And my dad being a gardener, a landscaper, I used to see all these tools in his shed and in his truck and in his van. And I used to have some time to spend with each one of these tools. And each one of these tools are used specifically for pruning, right? We have the pruning saw, which is pretty big. You see those rigid, jagged edges right there? That means if you're using this to prune, right? If you're using this to prune, and pruning is for your good. Sometimes we cut things off permanently. Sometimes we need that heavy machinery to get rid of certain things. And if that's what you need, then by all means, use that pruning saw to really get in there, right? Sometimes we need the bow saw. This is like a precision right there. If you want to cut a specific angle or line and you use that. The pole prune, the hard to reach places, Some of these pole prunes may not be used by you, but may used by your loved one. You may not be able to see because it's in a good distance from where you can reach, and you may need assistance, right? This one is another intimate, the hedge shares, right? That's the one that you can, snip up like that. It's the big scissors, right? You can snip, 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 snip. You can work fast with that, do quick work, and to get, your tree aligned with what you'd like for it to be. The lopper is for those difficult, hard, things that may need some more force behind it to then chop, to then cut. Sometimes we might need to use the lopper to get rid of certain things, people, places that have been hindering us from bearing healthy fruit. And then what I love is that we have the grass share, which is the smaller one that you have to get closer and more intimate. And there's the hand pruning, and there's the garden snip. These three instruments, you have to get up close and personal. You have to have a knowledge, a confidence, a level of intimate relation with whatever you're pruning. Right? You have to have that compassion to get in close and to cut finely the line, create boundaries, the line of things that will regulate you and dysregulate you. So use the tools necessary to then show up and do the things that we must do to have a healthy garden, to have a healthy ecosystem, to then produce the good fruit in ourselves first and in others. So almost closing, what did we gain? What did we learn, right? The Bible tells us to be fruitful, right? And multiply and to fill the earth and subdue it. How do we do that? By creating the awareness in ourselves first. What does intimacy mean for me first? What does that ecosystem of love mean for me first? What does my garden need, my internal garden, heart, mind, and body needs to come in as a person that can bear good fruit internally first? And then in having that knowledge, how do I share my intimacy with others, with those that I call friends, with those that I call family, with those that I call my partner, with those that I call my children, right? How do I create that ecosystem? It starts with the awareness in me. And then with that knowledge, I can share with others what it takes to maintain and elevate what is in me first. And then we can create an ecosystem that is conducive for all of our growth so that we can have a culture of love, a culture of intimacy, where these tools, where these understandings aren't foreign to us, where we are going towards love instead of pushing it away, right? Instead of rejecting it, instead of hiding it, instead of being fearful of it, instead of not acknowledging our emotions and not acknowledging our limitations and not acknowledging our capacity, right? And so all of this is for our good to then create an ecosystem of love, right? A garden of love, right? A family of love, a family culture of love. I want to share with you guys my family, right? This is my beautiful family, and this is my fruits, right? This is my good fruit, right? And so let's get back to what I said earlier about naming yourself a fruit and then naming your partners and your children and your grandchildren fruits. Me, I would definitely be a coconut, right? I would definitely be a coconut. Why? Because me plus any other fruit is a party. And that's just me personally. Right? I just love to intermingle with people. I love just mixing it up. And a coconut has multi-functions. You can drink the juice, you can eat the inside, you can use the shell, you can use the peels, you can use the branches, you can use almost everything on the coconut tree. And that's what I feel about me. God has given me a bunch of good gifts, and that's how I show up in this world as a coconut, as nutty as I want to be, right? And so for my wife, she'd definitely be a watermelon. Look at all these seeds she produced. Look at all these seeds she produced, right? She'll definitely be a watermelon. In fact, she had a watermelon belly when she had the triplets. We have triplets in our family. This is our eldest right here. She's 13, and the triplets will be 12 in a matter of a few days. And so her stomach was looking like a watermelon when she was pregnant with our triplets. And then we had all girls. And so my first daughter, she'd definitely be a kiwi, which is a very artistic and, in her own way. Lily would be a pomegranate, pomegranates look like they're out of this world, or dragon fruit, pomegranate or dragon fruit. She's out of this world and so fascinating in so many ways. Malin, our middle triplet, should probably be a papaya, right? Good for you in so many ways, but mysterious in its nature. That's what I'd say. And Robin, she would be a mango, right? Doesn't even know the benefits that is within her, all of the goodness that's within her. Ayo, I mean, I don't know. He'd be, Ayo would probably be a bag of grapes. He's so funny. He just brings joy to me. So, and then there's a Mahali. Mahali would probably be, let's see, a strawberry, and then Anise would probably be a banana, right? And you blend this all up together, you have a great smoothie of joy, of love, and a culture of love altogether. The reason why I asked about each one of us describing ourselves as fruit is because when you look at fruits, it's already a regulating thing. Talking about fruits allows us to smile, right? Talking about fruits, the attributes that you can attribute to any fruit is more than likely positive. So I hope that you will find some positivity within yourself first, and then to all those you call family, friends that are in your ecosystem. I hope this was beneficial. I hope that the handouts you can utilize. And of course, I'm not there for Q&A, but what I desire is that you can direct all the questions to Jamila, and then she will make sure that I get those questions and I can answer any question that you have within a few days of me getting them. And so I appreciate you all. Thank you and wonderful blessings. I hope that your home will be a home that cultivates love at every turn. Blessings.